Reparations. What does it mean? More importantly, what does it mean for so-called blacks? Do so-called blacks deserve reparations? What are the historical roots of the proverbial 40 acres and a mule? Does it have any legal and/or historical basis? Before we investigate the subject matter, let us take a glance at some other groups that have received reparations. The jurisprudence definition of reparations is replenishment of previously inflicted loss by the criminal to the victim, usually monetary restitution. The Japanese received more than $1 billion for their sufferings in internment camps during World War II. In 1942, shortly after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese people in the United States were forced into internment camps. President Franklin Delaware Roosevelt ordered their internment with Executive Order 9066. In 1988, Congress passed and Ronald Reagan signed legislation that apologized for internment camps on behalf of the U.S. government. And eventually, the U.S. government distributed $1.6 billion in reparations to camp survivors and their heirs. Native Americans have also received a somewhat sparse and wholesale ineffective form of reparations through cash payments of the Indian Claims Commission and the U.S. Court of Claims. They also receive land through Congress, but only for particular tribes. Lastly, they receive tribal recognition through Congress or the Bureau of Indian Affairs. However, Jewish people by far have been most successful in gaining reparations. In 1952, an agreement was signed with West Germany, which paid 3 billion marks over the next 14 years. 450 million was paid to the World Jewish Congress. Payments were made to the State of Israel and their heirs, those victims who had no surviving family. In fact, in 1956, 87.5% of the state's income was due to reparations payments. So what of descendants of Africa in the United States? Are they deserving of reparations for the sufferings and atrocities that were perpetuated upon them during the Atlantic slave trade from 1774 up until 1865? Many people are aware of the Emancipation Proclamation declared by President Lincoln. Perhaps not so familiar are the transition solutions outlined by Lincoln and others, including the proposition of reparations. Sherman's Field Order Number 15. Sherman Field Order Number 15 are orders issued by General William Tecumseh Sherman, military commander of the Division of Mississippi. It provided for 400,000 acres, 1,600 kilometers, of land alongside the Atlantic coast of Southern Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and the dividing of it into 14-acre parcels, 0.16 kilometers, on which to settle ex-slaves' families and other so-called blacks in the area. The orders were revoked by President Andrew Johnson after the assassination of Lincoln. The Freedmen's Bureau. The Freedmen's Bureau Bill was passed in 1865, March 3rd, intending to help the slaves with food, housing, medical, education, employment, etc., lasting for about a year, until a follow-up bill was vetoed by Andrew Johnson. In 1866, February 19th. However, June 26, 1866, the Senate passed an amended bill. Johnson vetoed it again, but Congress overrode that veto. The second Freedmen's Bureau bill stated, Section 4, And it be further enacted that the President is hereby authorized to reserve from sale or for settlement under the homestead or preemptive laws, and to set apart for the use of the freedmen and the loyal refugees, male or female, unoccupied land in Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and Arkansas, not exceeding in all 3 million acres of good land, parcels not to exceed 40 acres each. For the full document, please see Freedmen's Bureau Bill, December 4, 1865. In 2008, Congress issued an apology to so-called Black Americans for the institution of slavery and the subsequent Jim Crow laws that followed. According to the Webster's Dictionary, an apology is an expression of regret for having insulted or wronged another. One can only consider an apology sincere when it is followed up by efforts to right the wrong perpetuated. Reparations means to repair or to make amends for the wrong done. Simple regret or acknowledgement of the deed is not enough. Emancipation is the act of freeing one from restraints or influence. However, the emancipation of so-called blacks did not release one from the influence of the slaveholder. In fact, black codes, Negro Acts, Jim Crow, and a host of other political apparatus were manipulated in order to subjugate the descendants of Africa in this country. In modern times, anti-drug and gang laws are the device of preference. There are 3 steps that must take place when freeing a so-called slave. The first is emancipation. The second is nationalization, or restoring the identity or national name to the slave. And lastly, it is compensation. If the United States government truly wishes to right the wrongs perpetuated against descendants of Africa in this country throughout history, then the nationalization and compensation aspects of freeing a slave must be implemented. Therefore, reparations are due. Thank you for watching.